education. A lot of our elected officials here, our local policymakers. I'm going to give some of you a shout out because some of you had a rough evening Tuesday and you're still here. Susan Sandberg, not yet, but Kate Rosenparger and Matt Flaherty and Susie Campbell-Lurie, we're hoping come November. Who else did I say? Our township trustee from Bloomington, Kim Alexander, and her team is here. County Council Trent Deckard and Jeff McKim, and who am I missing here? Now that's a great turnout. Thank you so much. Thanks to my board members who are here this morning from United Way, Dr. Kirsten Gronberg and Pat McCafferty, and maybe one else that I missed. So this event this morning, which we are delighted to announce, Old National Bank has stepped up to sponsor this program for the rest of the year. So we are committed to having and then that means we can kind of up the marketing, up the food a little bit. The ticket sales weren't quite covering it all. So that's great news and really shows their dedication to these topics in our community and strengthening our community through just getting us together to kind of understand different perspectives and go from there and taking the conversation further if you so choose. So today we're going to talk about evictions and the intersection of policy, law, and poverty. And instead of me doing the moderating this morning, our friends from IU PACE, Mark Fraley, who is our collaborator in this project, is here to moderate. And so I will let you take it over and introduce our wonderful panel. And the format, same as last time, there's cards on your table for Q&A. So you'll see me and you'll see Sherry in the green wandering around looking through cards. Ask away any question that you're curious about with this particular topic. These folks have some amazing expertise in our community with this topic and the policy, practice, law side of it. So hope we have a lot of good questions. And if I'm forgetting anything, Mark, let me know. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Efra. Well, as Efra mentioned, my name is Mark Fraley, and I work for PACE at Indiana University, that's the Political and Civic Engagement Program. And at PACE we work to be able to sponsor civil dialogue and promote responsible engagement. So it's really a blessing to be here with United Way. They do such wonderful work in the community, as well as bringing in these wonderful discussions on important issues, oftentimes that are talking about things that sometimes are going to be directly relevant to our lives, but sometimes are also that are going in the lives of people that we don't always cross paths with. And I think that that's really important when we're talking about today's topic, which is eviction and poverty policy and the law. And so we have with us three fantastic guests, and so really looking forward to hearing from all of them. Marcy Wensler, who is here with Indiana Legal Services, Cynthia Clothier, who is here with Monroe County United Ministries, as well as Sarah Bloomsbaugh with the Bloomington Housing Authority. And so we are so grateful for all of them for being here today. And I'm going to give everybody the chance to be able to introduce who they are, what their organization does, and how it relates to the issue of eviction, starting with Marcy.
All right, thanks, Mark. My name is Marcy Wensler. I work with Indiana Legal Services. We are a statewide civil legal aid organization. And I have some little brochures on each table that talks about some of our special projects. It's always great to have acronyms. So the LITC is the Low Income Tax Clinic. That's statewide. Last year they saved clients $750,000 in debt. The newest one is the LAVA project. That's a great acronym. And it's Legal Assistance for Victimized Adults. And it is also statewide. It does not yet include Bruce Jones, our Bloomington-based LAVA attorney. There'll be a press release about him soon. Finally, the most colorful, the LGBT Law Project. Megan Stewart is based in Bloomington. It is also a statewide legal project. I direct the Housing Law Center, which is also statewide. The Bloomington office covers 14 counties. And here I'll talk mostly comments today about eviction and some about the law and the reality. And I guess I just would want us to start thinking back on our own experiences. I was trying to remember, you know, was there a time I felt like I was going to lose the roof over my head? Because a lot of people start out poor, right? We were in there, we didn't have water, but there's that experience of going up. And then I could just remember one time I was a teacher and I thought, I'm not going to make the rent this month. And what that felt like, and, you know, crying. But that was such a temporary thing, and we were talking about, you know, the unraveling of people in that experience.
My name is Sandy Clothier. I work with Monroe County United Ministries. Monroe County United Ministries was started many, many years ago. I think the date was 1939. It was begun by a number of people within the faith community, and it was organized first as a child care center for those people who weren't able to afford child care. So child care was offered at a reduced rate for those people who were in the community and need of it. Eventually, it was understood that there were many more issues other than child care that were needed to be addressed. So a food pantry was begun, and currently we have a food pantry that is open to people once a month. It is a client choice pantry, so people can walk through that pantry instead of just getting food to take home in bags that they don't pick out themselves. We offer items such as cleaning and hygiene items that are not covered by food stamps, and we offer Opportunity House vouchers, so we are connected with Opportunity House to help fund our organization. In addition, we have a financial assistance program that I work with, so we get money through United Way, we get money through Sophia Travis grants, and we get money through our MACM funds. And this money is used to help people who are behind in rent or utilities. They must see the trustee first before they come to us. We have a limited amount of money, so we try to make sure that when someone does come to us, we can help them by kind of piggybacking a lot of different agencies together so that they can keep their rent, keep their place. We're not always able to help, and so there are lots of times when we do our best, but we still know that that need is ongoing, and we're going to help one time in 13 months, but it may be that that person is in the same situation 3 months in the future. We also have started a new intensive program to work with individuals who are really interested in working on goals. So these may be people who are in poverty. They also may be people who have just not figured out the right path for them. And we work with them kind of step by step as they look at and work on their goals and then work towards meeting them. It's a long-term process. It can take up to 2 years. And it is a program where we actually work with them every week. Every 2 weeks we meet with them, and it's a really exciting program. We've just started that process.
I'm Sarah Rosemel with the Bloomington Housing Authority. I'm an assistant property manager. I've been there 14 years. At the Bloomington Housing Authority, we provide affordable low-income housing. In our public housing, we have 312 units. 2 of those are currently under renovation, so when those are done, we'll have 312 units. We also provide over 1,300 Section 8 vouchers for low-income housing, which, on that note, that list opens on June 4th at noon, and those are done online. So I have one flyer with me, but we can get more out for you on that. My job is to help people get their housing and to help them keep their housing, to refer them to MACM, to refer them to legal services to keep their housing. There's a lot of misconceptions about people that when they apply for housing,
already getting some of these questions coming in. And so as you're listening to these fine folks talk about these issues, please feel free to write down any questions if Rod is around there collecting them. So I want to start off just getting also a little bit of a picture for somebody who is facing eviction. What is that experience? What is that experience like? What is it when people? What are some of the misconceptions that people might have about people who are facing eviction? And what are some of the problems that they're focusing on as they go through this process?
Well, I think there are a lot of myths out there. One of the most predominant myths in legal issues are people widely think that if their place is not habitable or landlord's not making repairs, that they can withhold their rent. And Indiana does not have a statute that allows that, or repair and deduct. Many states do, and it would do us a big service to have some mechanism, because that's often the way people go in. There is a legal process. Unfortunately, plenty of people, it's a little bit of law west of the Pecos out there, there's plenty of people who don't take advantage of the legal process. Landlords and tenants have rights and responsibilities. There are laws, some of our landlord-tenant laws are fairly weak. There is a good, decent security deposit law. There is a meaningful domestic violence law that does protect people. A lot of people don't know about it. And lets people get out of the lease early, or bifurcate the lease, or not be penalized if they go somewhere else. The habitability statute is not very helpful. And even places like the city of Bloomington Housing and Neighborhood Development has, these criteria, and the statute says landlords have to, and tenants have to obey existing health and housing laws. So we have some, but there are people who have been subjected to this over and over and over again, and it is just seemingly impossible to get them to comply. And they still own properties, and they still rent to people without electricity or water or tons of mold. And how is it in the county that we do not have a housing code? How is it that a 2-year-old can die in the county when that same landlord who doesn't comply in the city doesn't have smoke detectors? Those are just, inexcusable. And the habitability statute, the big problem is the tenant remedy is to file a lawsuit. Well, that's a big, there's filing fees, you have to get legal help. We rarely can do that. I had one I filed recently for a client who's completely blind, living in a duplex, and a car crashed into his home and just made the whole front open. And that was April 16th, and we had to file a lawsuit to get the landlord to start repairs, which started the day before yesterday. So the state of affairs is not great, and we have a lot more to do.
I think most of the people that I see are living day to day. They are in situations where anything at all can cause them to become homeless. So someone has a perfectly decent job, but they have a medical condition. And they go through surgery, they go to the trustee to help with rent. They come to us and have help with rent. The condition persists, and they have to take more time off work. And eventually they run out of help because we cannot help over time. So that person becomes homeless. We have people who are on disability. Disability pays $750, $770 a month. Living on $770 is impossible for anyone. So even with subsidized housing, maybe they're paying $45 for housing. I recently worked with someone who is paying $300 plus for her Duke energy bill every month. She's in subsidized housing, but she does not have $300 a month for electric. This is common. It happens all the time, and it is a situation where someone who is poor anyway never gets out of that rut. And so without the services that are provided by agencies like the trustee and like MACM, Sherwood Oaks has been amazing lately for large amounts of money, and Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul. Without those agencies helping people on a regular basis, these people are homeless. And there really are no other opportunities that we have in this town for changing that at this point. So we obviously, those rates from the federal government are pretty low. Nobody can live on that kind of income, but we expect people to do okay. So there are so many situations that are like that. Somebody works in a fast food restaurant, and their hours may be changing week to week. They may not know what their hours are. They may have a car repair, and there's no way that they can get to work back and forth if their car isn't working. They have predatory lenders, so they go to JB Byrider for their car because nobody else is going to finance it. We have all sorts of issues like that that cause people in poverty to always be victims of predatory practices. And there really are no answers to that we have provided in this society that really make a difference. So we're constantly doing patchwork to try to get those people back to a situation where they're just barely surviving. But they're not thriving. There's no way they can thrive in that.
So at the Bloomington Housing Authority, we try to intervene before eviction gets there. We work with people on payment agreements to pay their rent. Again, we refer them to agencies to get help with their rent. If it's a housekeeping issue, we have a resident services coordinator. He's here somewhere. Oh, yeah, he's back there. He's been very helpful to keep people from becoming homeless. Like he helped somebody go get a shirt that they needed to get a job, to keep them from being evicted. So we have the grievance procedure that they're allowed, that they have the right to appeal. We work with them on payment agreements. We refer them. Again, there's law protections to keep them in housing. We do everything that we can to not evict people. We do include utilities, so that goes with what she said there. That does help people not have those high utility bills. So that's what we do on our end to help with that.
We're talking a lot about prevention, and I think that that's, an important piece because the cost of housing for a family in poverty is a much greater percentage of a family budget than it is for a lot of folks who are not in poverty. So what kind of warning signs can people, are there signs that people can look out for so that they can say, contact Marcy in advance of actually dealing with eviction or anything like that? Are there particularly warning signs that we can look out for so we can better prevent evictions from happening?
Well, there's one positive development. The new small claims judges have convened an eviction avoidance working group with some trustees and mediation and other agencies trying to change some of the forms, having a table that'll be staffed by an attorney and a social worker. And Deborah Meyerson is here from the South Central Indiana Housing Opportunity and Housing for Hoosiers. We're trying to get people there to get education, to get knowledge, to get representation as soon as possible. The reality is, though, that people, have to make impossible choices. So I'm sure most of you have heard Matthew Desmond's book called Evicted, where he moved to a Princeton professor, moved to Detroit, and just experienced what families were going through. And he said that essentially they daily confront these impossible choices. Do I pay rent or do I buy medicine? And experiencing repeatedly losing schools, losing possessions over and over. And he said, I used to think eviction and homelessness were the result of poverty, but I came to recognize that eviction is a cause, not just a condition of poverty in America. The lack of affordable housing is driving families to financial ruin and is one of the most important drivers of inequality in the nation today. So in Indiana, you have on your table this Prosperity Indiana, the state of housing in Indiana. 86 people a day are evicted in Indiana. The housing wage for somebody to rent a two-bedroom fair market rent would be, you'd have to work 86 hours a week to afford that. There is a shortage of almost 135,000 homes that are safe and available for the lowest income people. The housing stock is it's a negative 135,000 in Indiana. And one of the hidden ones that's coming up is 1 in 20 units that are subsidized, for example, by the low-income housing tax credit that does a lot of multifamily properties. They're facing expiring use restrictions in the next 5 years, so they will get to be out of having the lower rent but can do market rent. So the lack of affordable housing is definitely a crisis. And I guess I started out saying, think back to when you maybe felt, uncertain about your own tenure in housing. But I also encourage us to think to the future. What are our own views about affordable housing? Are we NIMBY? Do we think that, preserving neighborhoods and single-family houses? And what are our attitudes about, I know we have lots of new housing in town, but that is not necessarily affordable housing. So we're stepping forward to try to address some of these issues. And I just want us to be flexible in our thinking about how we make that happen in Bloomington.
I think that I would come from a little different angle because I'm not working in the same field as Marcy, but one of the things that we see oftentimes is that people do not come to us until it's right at the very last moment. Part of that is, interestingly, something that you can understand a little bit with brain science. So there's been a lot of talk in the last few years about what happens to someone when they are constantly under stress and when every single thing is a crisis. And people tend to just look at the moment-by-moment situation. What am I doing today? How am I going to get food today? How am I going to get to work today? How am I going to get my kids to school because my car isn't working? So it also is a difficult process to ask for help. So even though we have agencies that are available, it can sometimes take 3, 4, 5 different interviews and appointments for someone to get assistance. So for us, we require that they go to the trustee first, which is terrific. So if they go to the trustee and they are not able to get as much as they need, then they come to us. We sometimes have to send them out to other agencies in order to make the whole thing work. One of the things that we've tried to do at Macomb is work with other agencies right away. So we call and work with other places to make sure that we can help those people. But the fact is that if you call me and your lights are going off tomorrow, I can't do anything. And so it is really difficult for people who have this constant situation to actually have them be proactive in ways that are going to help them. So we really need things that work with people on a much deeper level to help them work through those things and actually start making successes in their life.
I would agree with everything they just said. The
particularly in the lives of people of color, how for men of color, incarceration is becoming to mark increasingly more of a part of lives for people in poverty, as well as eviction is for women in particular. Whereas you have some of the population being locked up is marking a lot of their day-to-day experiences, for other people being locked out is part of their day-to-day experiences. And so the question I have here says, what resources or potential resources are there locally to help people with felony convictions have better access to housing?
Well, there is one tool that Indiana has now that's an expungement statute. And our office does expungements where you can help people expunge from their record misdemeanors and felonies, certain passage of time. The thing is, you get one chance to do it. If you have criminal activity in multiple counties, you've got to do it all you get one bite at the apple, so you got to do it right. So that's something that's available. There are programs in Bloomington, New Leaf, New Life, that work with people in reentry as well.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to, and there I have another audience question that I actually think is highly relevant, because we have in here 3 people who 2 days ago were just elected to the city council. We also have a long-time city council member here, we've got members of the county council. What are some of the things that you would love to say to our elected officials in particular? Maybe some of those as they are beginning to carry out their jobs. What should be first and foremost in their mind when they are thinking about issues about eviction and poverty in the law? Sorry, newly electeds. Your honeymoon's over. By the way, there's a general election in the fall. I should actually point out that they haven't been elected yet. We always just make certain assumptions and everything like that. So they got to do that. But they hope to be elected, and they have to be thinking about these things.
Yeah, I think I called out already to some extent about the lack of a county code and things. This eviction avoidance project I was mentioning, they presented Deborah presented the other day for Jack Hopkins funding. And so there's, funding opportunities that can help do eviction avoidance as well. And affordable housing is just repeat.
I think that transportation issues are a huge part of why people have issues regarding their rent and keeping their housing. So I think that transportation is a really key issue. We have buses that don't go out of the city. I know we've discussed that over and over and over again, but it's a real issue. We have predatory lending for people who are in poverty. When it comes to cars, there is no other place that someone can get a car other than going to a place like J.B. Byrider. Those are things that could make a huge difference in someone's life. If they did not have 2 car payments of $200 every 2 weeks, maybe they could afford to continue to pay their rent and continue to make progress towards stability. We have terrible wages in this town. The wages do not keep up with any kind of need for basic living income. We have employers who work people very late and then very early the next morning, and they have to be there or they lose their job. We have employers who don't allow sick days. We have all sorts of issues in this community and across the country that don't really respect employees. So I think that while it's wonderful to talk about housing and all of the things around housing, we need to also be looking at what makes a difference in someone's life that allows them to actually build some sort of stability. And I know that these are larger issues than we can answer in this town, but I think that it is something that we all have to be aware of, that we all have to be thinking about how do we actually address some of these issues.
Excellent, thank you for those comments. So I've got an audience question. It's interesting because Services, but could you explain what love eviction means? And what does the panel think about this being a requirement to get into some shelters? Does anyone else know what it means?
Love eviction?
Yes, maybe.
Does that mean where your boyfriend tries to evict you from the house?
This has stumped us all. All right, so now we're going to have to go Google that. But thank you. Anyway, so one of the things that is that we're getting a lot of these questions coming forward is with regards to what sort of rights tenants actually have, and if violations are actually necessary in Indiana in order to face eviction. So are you required to actually have to miss payments in order to be able to get evicted in the state?
No, you can get evicted if it's the end of your lease. If it's a month-to-month lease, you just get a 30-day notice. One of the challenges are mobile home parks, where somebody owns their mobile home, but you have a 30-day notice to move. And if you get behind on lot rent, then the landlord, there's a mobile home park owner's lien, so they can prevent your mobile home from being moved if you have unpaid charges. So several $1,000s to move a mobile home. In any event, if at the end of your lease, you don't have to have a violation. But I should say, I mean, this is all pretty negative stuff. I mean, there are some great landlords out there. There are some great tenants out there. When we get somebody, we want to make the tenants be better tenants, understand rights and obligations. How to read a lease? Who knows how to do that? I mean, what's in your wall? What's in your lease? I mean, and there will be clauses in there that will be contradictory to the law. So it may say the tenant is responsible for all maintenance, all appliances. So if the plumbing or the water line breaks, but that's not true under Indiana law. And I did want to mention, though, there's the Fair Housing Act is a powerful, powerful tool, and particularly for people with disabilities. If there's any connection between a disability and the reason why you might be being evicted, you can ask for a reasonable accommodation. And it's not just getting a parking place. Sometimes it's, curing the problem is the deal. And can I make one more plug?
Absolutely.
I mentioned SIHO. You can get on your Housing for Hoosiers, you can download free this handbook, Renting in Indiana, Handbook for Tenants and Landlords. It's a joint project with Indiana Legal Services and Housing for Hoosiers and SIHO. And I will say, this would never have happened without Deborah Meyerson being just short of harassing me. It just but it's an important tool, and it's targeted for landlords and tenants to summarize the laws and practical tips. And I know you guys are working on a navigator program to help people, navigate in the search for affordable housing.
I just want to add that for the Bloomington Housing Authority, we cannot evict unless it's serious or repeat violations of the lease. So we're not going to just throw somebody out with their leases up because I does not allow that. So I just wanted to add that. It must be serious or repeat violations.
But the Section 8 voucher program, it used to be forever housing in the sense that there had to be good cause to evict, like in public housing. But under the voucher program now, if the landlord doesn't wish to renew the lease after the first year, they don't have to. And hopefully you'll keep your voucher. To get evicted, you may lose your voucher. So you're trying to preserve the voucher. And, the eviction process, usually by time people come to us and you're crosswise with the landlord, it's not necessarily a friendly process. Sometimes you can resolve things. If you can't, I try to ensure that they can exit gracefully if possible and in a lawful manner.
All right. We mentioned earlier that there are good landlords out there, right? There are people out there who are dependent on us. We certainly don't want to give the impression that we're here to bash landlords or anything like that. And if you are a good landlord out there, kudos to you, and shout out to you. One of the things that I'd like to, and I got a question from the audience here, which I think is a really good one, which is, what landlord practices which are collaborative and productive have you observed? And maybe if, Sarah, if you have something to say, when we start at the opposite. Maybe not, that's fine. Yeah. What landlord practices which are collaborative and productive have you observed?
I have to go back to the same things I've been saying, just giving them resources, referrals, doing everything we can to help them prevent going to court. Our last resort is going to court. I haven't really observed that from other landlords, but sometimes they're a little harsh and they're just ready to throw them out and they don't care, and they'll have the money right in their hand in front of the judge and they refuse to take it. And we just couldn't do that.
I find that most of the landlords that I work with are really very, very anxious to help the tenant stay in their place. So generally speaking, the people that we see have been either late on payments or have had partial payments for several months, and landlords are more than happy to work with them and to have them stay in their homes. So sometimes they waive late fees, sometimes they will give them extended time period to make an agreement with them. If we cannot cover everything, they may have extra fees that they have to pay, but they are willing to do that over time. So I think many, many landlords are really very helpful when it comes to keeping people in their homes. And that has certainly been my experience. On occasion, someone is not, but I think that is, for me, it's not the majority of the people that I work with.
The collaborative is certainly the landlords who work with agencies, but in terms of productive, I think of, you all probably know Tim Hankey. Years and years ago, under the auspices of United Way and Chamber, the leadership, Bloomington, there were subject groups, and one of them was about affordable housing. And we looked at the Community Reinvestment Act. That was a little controversial, but in any event, out of that, Tim began developing affordable housing and housing for people with disabilities. So I would call that productive for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Excellent. I have another audience question I think is pretty interesting, because we have some different standards in the city and for people who live in the city and for folks who live in the housing, who live in the county, right? And so what can tenants do if basic housing is not provided in the county in lieu of any housing standards like the city has? And is there any chance a move could be implemented with the city to have those enforcement provisions?
Yeah, we should ask some of these folks. I know Harris has tried mightily to get county housing ordinance and collaborative efforts.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
Just that I know it's under discussion. Maybe some of the folks here who are on the Affordable Housing, County's Affordable Housing Commission might want to comment. I'm not on that commission.
Yeah, I was gonna see, I mean, it's something that Monroe County currently has an Affordable Housing Advisory Commission, and that's a priority of what we're kind of trying to move towards. There's a lot of different things, you're moving first in terms of what the state allows you to do, enforcement, so it's definitely an important issue that we are talking about, and I wish there were like an easy way to just say, hey, it's done, but it's trying to figure out how to, because it's how to fund it. The state has some limitations on how you can support a program like that, which recently even Bloomington's program is endangered. I probably presumptuous to say that, but in terms of how to fund it, because there were limitations that the Indiana State Supreme Court recently put down of how you could fund it, and Susan could probably add more to that.
Even our city's rental inspection program is under some pressure from the Indiana General Assembly. You know, we had kind of been grandfathered along, being a college town and rentals being such an important part of the fabric of our housing, but even our ability to provide supervision that our rental inspection programs don't even get cut. So it's a challenge, no matter how you cut it. We're proud of what we have been able to do and what we hope to continue to do in the future, but we're under assault constantly.
Yeah, I think a combination of local awareness and advocacy and doing what we can locally, but certainly organizing and having advocacy at the state level is super important, and that's just a one part.
And with that, I should also mention that over these tables, and I'm not including everything right now, but just to be able to point out that we do have contact information for your national, state, and local elected officials. And so obviously we want to be able to inspire any sort of advocacy in any way possible. So, this is one of those things that you can make sure that you're in touch with your elected officials about your state representatives, state senators, and as well as local policymakers as well. So, go ahead.
Can I just on that sheet, one of the leading state policy groups is Prosperity Indiana, used to be Indiana Association for Community Economic Development, Indiana Coalition for Housing and Homeless Issues, and it's been a long track. But if you go there, they have active policy issues that they pursue. I went up to testify this session on landlord-tenant bill, and they canceled the hearing. So that was better than being booed. So.
Better than
You were coming, Marcy.
better than being booed. That always makes a nice little slogan. All right. I do, before closing things up, a number of you on this panel have mentioned, both the impacts of poverty on the brain of a person who's growing up, as well as the fact that eviction is not just a consequence of poverty, but actually a cause of poverty. And so this is one question I want to ask all of you is, what does this actually have on, what sort of impacts, psychological, physical, does this actually have on young people who are moving from place to place, who don't have that source of stability, some of those things that we often take for granted when we're growing up with a warm home and a safe place to sleep every night? What are some of the impacts that might have on some of those young people growing up in that unstable environment? Go for it.
I can kind of speak from experience because I did grow up poor. My mom was in and out of public housing. We were constantly moving around. I was constantly the new student. So it causes issues in that person's life with depression, insecurities. I actually lived in public housing, got behind in my rent. I was about to be evicted. Went to the trustee for help. They sent me to the housing authority to do volunteer work, and that's how I got my job there. So things have changed.
So I think that anything that really is traumatic for a child, and certainly moving and not having stability is terribly traumatic. And what we're learning is that those traumas continue into adulthood. Trauma does not go away unless we really address it. So one of the things that I think we really need in this town is easier access to mental health facilities. The people that we see almost always have issues that they really need to tackle on an in-depth basis to help them work through all that trauma. I know Catholic Charities is working with PTSD. PTSD is something that most people have when they've gone through trauma. It's part of the whole thing that we deal with as human beings if we go through trauma that we can't work through. And so having things where it's going to be months and months before someone can actually access that is really hard, because if you're not starting that process and you're not able to get in for a long time in order to work on those things, they're going to not be dealt with, obviously. So you can make a few little changes, but a lot of people really need that kind of support. And I think for all of the programs that are out there,
security, affects health, it affects education levels, it affects lifetime earnings. We tried a project once that was, we were gonna have with Fairview, one child, one school, 1 year. That's a big task. And this, like, even one success story involved a colleague of mine going to Evansville for a custody hearing, and that, you know, the amount of resources that went into that one case just to help that kid stay in school was disproportionate to, you know, what can be accomplished, I think. I do want to say one positive thing. I'm really trying to say positive things. The state legislature did pass a bill this time that for homeless youth that gives them more tools to access identification and driver's license and things like that. So birth certificates, everything helps.
Thank you so much. Are there, we're getting to the end of our program here. Are there any final words that any or all of you would like to offer about understanding the nature of somebody who's going through eviction?
I think what I would just say is that it's real easy to, from a distance, see people as not quite living up to the standards that we all think they should have. And I think that for all of us who work with people in poverty, it changes your life completely. You have a different sense of what they're going through. We had a group of students from IU do research on cliff effects, and that has to do with someone who is starting from poverty and starting to make money, and what happens as they start to gain some sort of resources, and all of the things that fall away over time. So you get to a certain point, you lose your food stamps. You get to a certain point, you lose this, you lose that. I just think that it really is important for all of us to realize that we're in this together, and we all need to be working together to understand each other, because that's when we really can make dynamic changes that make a difference to everyone's life.
I might be a little off subject, but my final statement would be just to encourage everyone to apply. There's a lot of people that think they don't qualify, so they just don't apply, so they remain homeless. And it doesn't matter what you've done in the past, even if you've been evicted, we'll still take you if it was because you couldn't pay your rent. That's why we're there. So I just encourage everyone to apply. And again, the Section 8 wait list opens on June 4th. No line,
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you all for coming to this. And thank you to United Way, the National Bank, the Nation Mill, and slips. Yes. You will see little opportunities to give us little evaluations on what you would like to be able to see at these events in the future. Keep in mind the next one is going to be June something. Oh.
We're going to share their story and perspectives. So every second Thursday, right here.
Every second Thursday, the coffee will be here and so snacks. Thanks.